Hey everybody, I thought I would add my voice to the cacophony of words about bullet setback, but I'm going to give you the context and the unvarnished truth. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, welcome to the Armed Citizen channel, where I talk about all the things that I wish someone had told me about when I first strapped up some 30 years ago. Please like, share, subscribe, and I always appreciate your comments, the good ones and the bad ones. Each of them helps me deliver better content to you. So please let me know where I might have gone wrong, how I can do better, and what you might like to see on this channel. Let's get on to it. All right, I don't know about you, but I am getting a lot of videos about bullet setback, and some of them say, it's not so bad. Some of them say it is kind of bad. Some of them say it's really bad. So what I'm here to do today is to give you this video and give you the full contextual goings on so you can make your own informed decision. Before I talk about what bullet setback actually is, I got to talk to you about what normally goes on with your firearm. Now, there is a website out there. It's called SAAMI.org, SAAMI.org. And what they do is they publish the standards for firearm ammunition. This way, a 9mm will round of ammunition will work in every firearm designed for 9mm. And and it's got all the physical dimensions and all that other kind of stuff. But the one important part that we're going to talk about today is what's called chamber pressure. And it's this chamber pressure that's what drives the bullet out of the barrel. Now, if you ever look at your barrel, here's one of my pistol barrels, you will notice how this area here, where the chamber actually is thicker than the rest of the barrel. And this is because this part has to handle that 35,000 psi, whereas by the time the bullet gets down here and the pressure gets here, it's a whole lot lower. And the best way I can describe what chamber pressure means, it's like a submarine. A submarine will have a maximum safe depth at which the engineers know that you go down to that depth but no deeper, and you can stay there for days, weeks, months, years, and nothing bad's going to happen. Below that maximum safe depth, though, there is a chance, starting at slightly more than zero all the way up to 100%, that the hull is going to fail from too much pressure on the outside of it, and it will what's called implode, which means it will crush up, and anybody inside gets reduced to their component molecules far faster than they could receive the pain impulse. But the 9mm, and every round of ammunition is different. That's why there's SAAMI, to express all these numbers. For the 9mm, that chamber pressure is 35,000 pounds per square inch. Now, I did a little bit of math, and there is a gap between about here, the bottom of the bullet, all the way down to here, which is the top inside, I guess you could call it, of the casing. And it's in that little space that there's the powder and some air. And when you pull the trigger, you dent that little center there. That's called the primer. The primer causes a spark to go into that powder, and it causes the powder it causes a chemical reaction in the powder. The powder will what's called conflagrate. I think that's the way you pronounce it. And conflagrate means a fast burning, more than, say, like burning wood, slower than, say, C4. So it conflagrates. It burns very quickly. Now, this is a 7.8mm, no, I'm sorry, 8.7mm cube. This is a representation of the amount of space inside that 9mm round. When the powder conflagrates, it generates gas as part of that chemical process. And it generates this much gas. This is 1,973 times that 8.7mm cube. And this is 109.2 millimeters on a side. So, math, if I were to take the air in this cube and cram it down into this cube, I would get about 30,000 psi. Now, the engineers, like I talked about, between the maximum safe depth and the crush depth of submarines, they like to what's called over-engineer. In other words, room for things to go wrong. We don't want the crush depth to be a foot below the maximum safe depth. We want to be able to get down there a little deeper, maybe because of a casualty or whatever. And so there is room for error. Now, like I said, the 9mm has a design maximum of 35,000 pounds per square inch. The engineers actually designed that chamber to hold anywhere from 55, 60,000 psi to 70 or 80,000 psi, depending upon the manufacturer and what they have to play with. They obviously want to make the weapon as safe as possible if something bad happens. So you do have room for error, and I'm going to talk about what happens when we're on the wrong side of that 35,000 psi. So that's what happens when everything goes off. The powder conflagrates, it generates that much gas, which pushes the bullet out the barrel and the slide to the rear, because Newton's third law, for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction, and that's how everything runs. So when you actually load a round into the chamber, we have what's called a feed ramp. That's this part right here, and it deflects the bullet. So the bullet on top of the magazine is right about here. And as the slide pushes it forward, it hits here, it's deflected up, it goes into there, and it seats all the way into the chamber. this bullet is held in place by nothing more than a pressure crimp. In other words, it's being hugged into place. So every time this tip hits this feed ramp, it gets pushed back, almost imperceptibly. I mean, very, very small. But if we hit it dozens or hundreds of times, then that is a cumulative effect, and this will get shorter. And as we disrupt that crimp, because we're moving it back, it actually becomes easier. The crimp loosens. Now, this is a very severe setback. And I actually got this round by, I got a little higher poundage spring than spec, trying to reduce my recoil in my Glock. And it actually hit the top of the chamber so hard it jammed. So there you go. That's the difference. This is a very severe setback, and actually this I would never fire because the bullet setback is so high. Why? Well, like I said, math. If I cram this much air into this much space, I'm going to get 30,000 psi. If I cram this much air into half or less of that, I'm going to get, come on math people, 60,000 psi. 60,000 psi is pushing the limit for the safety margin for that barrel. So that's one thing you don't ever want to push. That is a limit you don't want to get near. So that's bullet setback. After repeated blows of the bullet to the feed ramp, it's a cumulative process, and the bullet gets pushed farther inside the casing. That space for the powder and air is reduced. And when the powder conflagrates, it generates more pressure than what it should, which could lead to the failure of the weapon. So what does a weapon failure due to overpressure look like? Well, I got this video here. This one was of a guy who bought some cheap 9mm ammo, and quality control was not very good. All I can probably say is they had too much powder in there, right? If we have enough powder to take that much space and make that much air, that gives us 30,000 psi. If we cram double the powder into there, we're going to have double this, and that's going to cause 60,000 psi, which is why his weapon failed. He was injured. If you watch the whole video, he still has a hunk of something in his hand. So it did not end well. It ended as well as it could. He survived, and the weapon was rebuilt and has been returned to service. Now, this video here this is from a channel called Kentucky Ballistics, and this guy has a single shot 50 caliber rifle, and he was firing some hot rounds. High performance, I don't know what slap means, but he overpressured it, and it blew up in his face. And if you didn't watch the whole video, he actually got a gash of something right along here. Something came along and did that, and actually damaged his carotid artery, and he could have bled out and died in a few seconds, but his dad was there and was able to stop the bleed out, and he made it to the hospital and still kicking today. So this is what happens when you do things that exceed your chamber pressure. Now, what's the chances of this happening? Well, about this much.
Up.
That came from Kolian Noir's video. I couldn't find the total source, so I just used his. But a spent round hit an open box of shells and dented the primer on one shell enough to set the configuration process into motion. And it just went pack because there was no barrel confining it to allow the pressure to build up to 30,000 psi. If you just leave a bunch of powder, like if I had powder here and I lit it on fire, it would just go whoop and be gone. It only creates that kind of pressure when it's inside of a chamber. All right, so how does bullet setback happen? Well, it happens, like I said, with repeated blows to the projectile of a shell. And how do we do that? Because we're cheap. Self-defense rounds of ammunition are costing over $1 each, and we're cheap. We don't want to blow through them any faster than we have to. So there is 2-3 methods on what we do about this. The first one is we take a magazine full of self-defense rounds, and when it comes time to load our carry weapon, we put the magazine in, we chamber around, we put it in our holster, and we keep it there. And then some people at night, some people never, some people only at the range, will go ahead and drop that stick of ammunition and rack the slide, capture that single round, put it aside to either unload the weapon for at night, or they're at the range and they're about to load it full of practice ammunition so they can do drills at the range. And there's 3 ways of reloading this, and I'm going to talk about 2 and then my solution, and then I'm going to talk about the third, because the third you don't want to do, but I'm going to describe it anyway. So the first way is you take that single round, the one that you ejected from the chamber, and you press it back into the magazine, because if you have a 17 round magazine, he had 16 because he put all 17 in, chambered one, the magazine now has 16. So he pushes the round back into the magazine now has 17, he puts it in, and he racks the slide, and we are now back to 16 in the magazine and 1 in the chamber. And that round has now been chambered twice, so it's received 2 blows to the nose. The second way is you take the magazine with 16, you put it in, you chamber that round, you drop that magazine that now has 15, you take the round that came out of the chamber before, you put it in, and you now have 16. So what you've actually done is you have swapped the positions of the top 2 rounds. Now, that just means if you only do those two, it's going to take twice as long than if you do one for it to receive a given number of impacts to the round to cumulatively cause setback. Or you can do my method. This is what I do because I'm weird and I'm paranoid. Not paranoid, just concerned. So I have two carry weapons, and there is only two places that I will load and unload my firearms. I keep my firearms in condition one, loaded in a holster, unless I'm actually getting ready to use them. So, like I said, there's only two places that I will load and unload my weapons. The first is in my office. I will actually unload it, and then I will bring it out here, convert it for cool fire use, or I will clean it. The other place is the range, and I'm actually going to practice with my carry weapon. So because, like I said, I have two carry weapons that I use depending upon the circumstances. I have 4 dedicated magazines. These two are the two that stay in my range bag. And I have 2 more, obviously, in my office. And these are what I call chamber mags. In other words, all I do is with each of these, depending upon the weapon, I have an empty weapon. I insert this mag, the chamber mag. I chamber a round off of it. I then drop this mag, put it aside. I take my carry mag that is full to capacity, insert it, press check, everything, and then holster it, and I am good to go. And I do the same thing at the range. Now, what do I do with that ejected shell that's been chambered? I got this. This is just a office products tray I got at Home Depot, or not Home Depot, Office Depot. And last year, this is telling you how often this happens. Last year, I filled up all 4 magazines to capacity, and every time I eject a shell, it goes into here. When the magazines are empty and this is full, what I will do is I will take all those, reload my 4 magazines, and I will go through the process again. So these have been chambered once. After they've been chambered twice, I will take them down, I will add them into the mix of my practice ammo and take these down to the range and expend them. Now, I'm also making it a point to pick up a couple of boxes of carry ammo every payday, just because, building up a stock. And so after I've shot these out, I will take my carry magazines, I will empty them out, I will fill these chamber mags with that ammunition, and then I go to my storage and I get out enough hollow points, enough carry ammo to go ahead and load up those magazines again. So I am constantly doing what's called a FIFO rotation, first in, first out. So that's how that works. You gotta chamber and unchamber rounds unless you're going to shoot them every time they chamber. So this is a workaround that I have found. You can do this. You can do something different. I don't have all of the answers. Hell, I don't even have all of the questions. So You know, my advice, and $4.85 will get you a hot flavored caffeinated beverage at a certain Starbucks based store. Now, the third way you can reload your firearm actually prevents setback, but it's actually worse. So this is an incomplete. I don't have the recoil spring in here, okay? But this is how this looks. And if I pull this out, you will notice right here that there is a little hook. This is called the extractor. This little hook when the round is loaded in, I don't know if I can actually do this or not. It comes up from underneath as it's being chambered, and that hook catches the rim. This is why semi-automatic weapons have that little detent right there, is so that hook is there. Now, this hook will rotate out slightly. It's under a lot of pressure, but it's designed in case it's over-engineered. In case of something happens, there is some give, and that's also part of the process of ejecting the shell. Now, if you manually drop that round into the chamber and then let the slide go forward, either at full speed or you let it down gently and then tap it to get it into place, what's happening is you are providing what's called an off-axis force on that hook. That hook is meant to withstand an occasional blow like that, much like the chamber is designed to handle an overpressure situation. But you don't want to have it happen regularly. So you want to, at every possible instance, do not have a round in the chamber and you bring the slide forward. And the best way I can illustrate that is with a hammer. When I go to drive a nail, I can use the strike face. This is the way it's supposed to be done. I could strike the nail here. It's a whole lot more difficult, and this will eventually break, because if I'm hitting with the force that I'm hitting with this, if I hit it over here, this guy is not meant to take that force, and it will break. The extractor is just like that. It is not meant to take those kind of blows from the outside on top of it. So you will break that, and the bullet won't come out. And, you know, Murphy says that it's going to happen at the worst possible time. You're in a defensive situation, and the extractor fails. You pull the trigger, it goes bang, but the round don't come out. The expended brass doesn't come out, so the new round can't come in, and all of a sudden, and rather unexpectedly, you now have to defend your life with a very expensive rock instead of a finely tuned pistol. So please don't ever jam that round into the, drop the round into the chamber and then jam the extractor around it. It can do it, doesn't mean it's supposed to, right, Jeff?
before. Yeah, but your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
Now, like I said, there's room for error in the chamber pressure, right? It's supposed to take no more than 35,000, and it could probably take up to at least 70,000. But what happens if you consistently use ammunition that's running 40, 50,000 psi, say? Say you're doing a plus P through a 9mm Luger. Well, two things happen. One is you wear the gun out. That slide, when it goes back, is meant to deliver a certain amount of force to the slide stop, right? When it gets all the way back, it's still traveling, it still has force. And just like the chamber pressure, right, there is a level of force that slide stop can take day after day after day after day and not even worry about it. But if you're driving it back harder, what's going to happen is you're going to start wearing the rails out. You're going to start breaking down that slide stop, and maybe all of a sudden that slide isn't going to stop. And where is the path of that slide? Well, that slide is going to come this way. So do you want that to happen? The other thing is you will wear your barrel out. First of all, that higher chamber pressure will eventually cause the chamber of the barrel to bulge on the inside, and that's not good. That leads to other conditions that can accelerate and wear and enhance the chance of an explosive disassembly, shall we say. Another thing is the base of the bullet, the part here that goes out the barrel, the bottom is designed in such a way that when the pressure is on it, forcing it going, it will actually spread it out just a little bit, because barrels have rifling. And the rifling is meant to spin the bullet to give it stabilized flight. And when you have an overpressure situation, you're actually spreading that out a little bit more, and you're wearing down the barrel faster than it was meant to be worn down. So running hot rounds consistently through a firearm will eventually beat it up to the point where it will fail. So please, 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 unless you know what you're doing, do not reload ammunition. I'm not saying don't reload. I used to reload myself. Until you know what you're doing, don't reload your ammo. I highly suggest that you do not trust someone else's reloaded ammo. And the best thing I can say is stick to reputable manufacturers of ammunition. Rotate your rounds. If you're going to chamber them more than once, have a system to rotate them out. Don't care what you do. I gave you my suggestion. Take care of your weapon. If you take care of your weapon, you don't abuse it, it will give you many years of service, and it will dependably work in that one critical moment that is the difference between you being in this life and you suddenly ending up in the next one. So, as we say in Memphis, stay bullet free, and y'all have yourselves a wonderful day. Thank you for watching the entire video. If what I discussed here was valuable to you, I ask that you like, share, and subscribe, and Maybe drop a few coins in my tip jar to keep me in ammo. Thank you.